Okay, I think that we can get started. So thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. My name is Andrea Gall, and I'm the chair of Farm Management Canada. I also farm with my family in Oxford County, Ontario, just about 40 minutes from here, actually straight down the 401. We've got a cash crop and a cow-calf operation, and we run a seed dealership and a fertilizer dealership as well. I also work off the farm as a consultant at Wilton Consulting Group, and at Wilton, we focus on facilitating sustainability and innovation in the agricultural industry, so we have the pleasure of working with agricultural organizations across the country. I'm so pleased to be welcoming you to the Agricultural Excellence Conference brought to you by Farm Management Canada. Thanks to those of you who were able to join us last night for the welcoming reception. We were pleased to be joined by Daniel Secord, who shared a little bit about the history of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered here on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We recognize this gathering place is home to many past, present, and future First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Our acknowledgement of the land is our declaration of our collective responsibility to this place and its people's histories, rights, and presence and commitment to seeking redress and healing. I'm here today with my fellow dedicated directors and staff, and we're so thrilled to embark on this learning journey with you. You will notice that our name badges look a little bit different so that you can easily identify us to ask for assistance or if you'd like to chat. So the name tags of the board members have some black on the bottom. And at this stage, I'd like to give a bit of a shout out to the board members who are here with us in person today. So if you could stand as I call your name. First up, I'll say hello to Steve Duff, our vice chair. Thanks, Steve. We also have Curtis Boyd with us today. Thanks, Curtis. Rob Cox is with us as well. And we've got Jim Selman joining us as well. Great. And our staff, of course, are here with the conference supporting throughout the day as well. So look for the staff with the blue name tags if you need any assistance. Farm Management Canada is a national nonprofit, non-government organization dedicated to increasing the awareness, appreciation, and adoption of business management practices on farms across Canada through research and education, including events like this conference, to build the capacity of Canada's farmers for sustainable growth and prosperity. Our annual AgEx conference is the only national gathering place for Canada's thought leaders and practitioners dedicated to farm management excellence. Farmers and future farmers attend to build their business acumen through practical learning sessions focused on providing tangible take-homes. And I'll give the shout out, of course, to the students that are joining us from a number of universities and colleges today. And we have academics, advisors, and organizations and governments who attend to exchange insights to improve their capacity to support the needs of Canada's farmers to ensure they have the best chance of success through farm management excellence. This year's theme, Embrace the Opportunity, acknowledges that while we are faced with ever-changing and increasingly complex business environment, including the pressures to support Canada's economic, environmental, and social sustainability goals, by exploring proven management practices and fostering proactive planning, we can find and embrace the opportunities presented. I just wanted at this stage to touch on a few housekeeping items as well. So please make sure to refer to your delegate book for the conference agenda, the speaker listing. Oh yes, Heather's nicely being our van in white and holding it up for us. It also has the speaker listing, the workshop locations, and the venue map. The registration desk just in the hall. Please visit the team there if you have any questions throughout the conference. The washrooms are located outside the conference room as well. And I know that Wi-Fi has been a bit of a challenge for some of us. So if you're having any challenges accessing the Wi-Fi, there should be some cards on your tables that will have the instructions there. So if you go to Delta_conference, you can enter the code Guelph 2023, and that's a Guelph with a capital G. And then if you're on your laptop or your tablet, you'll probably have to do another extra step, and you may need to go to marriottwifi.com to go to the screen to get it to prompt you to enter that access code. We also want to highlight, of course, the social media aspect. So for the people who can't be with us or the people who might have to step out briefly, please share your experience on Twitter, or apparently it's called X now, Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag AgEx2023. We'd love it if you could share your insights or let the people who weren't able to join us today hear a little bit about what they're missing. So hopefully they can arrange their plans so that they can join with us next year. I also want to give a shout out. We've got Eric here as well. And please make sure you go and visit with Eric in the hallway and you can join in on some live Q&A. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what brought you to AgEx and what your learning journey has been like while you've been with us. I also really want to highlight the Coach on Call program. On each table, and I think Heather's holding it up for us again, you'll see that there's a QR code that you can scan to find a coach and book a time. And I've had the pleasure of chatting with delegates from previous conferences, and they've really highlighted that it's been a bit of an aha moment or a light bulb moment to be able to have that one-on-one time with the coach of their choice to help them chat a little bit about next steps for their operation. So you can see the 5 coaches that we have on call. We've got Ed Broshinsky from Cargill. We've got Audrey Morin with FCC, Kelly Dobson with Leadershift, Elaine Fraze with Seeds of Encouragement, and Darren Shrosby with 33-7. So please make sure you take the opportunity to book a time to chat with one of our coaches. AgEx, of course, would not be possible without our sponsors, and our sponsors are so crucial to all of the work that we do throughout the year as well. So we wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of our sponsors who made the event today possible. Our title sponsor that we want to start off with highlighting is MNP. MNP has been such a great sponsor and supporter of Farm Management Canada over the years. So thanks so much, MNP, for helping with today as well. You can see on the screen our workshop sponsors, Leadershift, our farm tour sponsors, and I heard so many great things about the farm tour. I'm sad that I missed out yesterday. I'll have to hear more from those who went, is John Deere. Our panel sponsors are FCC and the Canadian Canola Growers Association. You can see our Kickstart sponsors here as well. We've got our session sponsors listed on the screen, so thanks so much to all of our session sponsors. Our meal sponsors, which of course is so crucial for us to have that time to network and chat with everyone over the lunchtime and the dinners and the early start with the breakfast. The Seeding Excellence sponsors, and of course the media sponsors. And then finally, we want to highlight our generous supporting partners. And these partners really helped to promote AgEx within their networks, so help to get the word out about the conference and all of the great things we'll be discussing over the next 2 days. In lieu of speaker gifts, we have donated to the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association's Farm Safe Foundation. Farm safety, of course, doesn't just happen. It takes resources, time, planning, and training. The Farm Safe Foundation does this by supporting CASA's farm safety initiatives, helping to keep Canadian farmers, farm families, farm workers, and farming communities safe. Next, we're pleased to have with us this morning the Honorable Rob Black. Senator Black has worked in the rural, agricultural, and leadership arenas for much of his career. He's been involved in 4-H for almost 50 years and other leadership programs along the way, such as Junior Farmers and the Advanced Agricultural Leadership Program, more commonly known as ALP. He credits his involvement in these programs with allowing him to develop the skills that would lead him to become a senator. On February 27, 2018, Senator Black was sworn in as a senator representing the province of Ontario. He's the chair of the Standing Committees on Agriculture and Forestry and has been the chair of the Canadian Senators Group since its inception. In 2012, Senator Black was honored with the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal and in 2021 was recognized as one of the top 50 most influential people in agriculture by the Canadian Western Agribition. While Senator Black was originally hoping to be with us in Guelph today, his hometown isn't very far from here at all. He's busy working with farmers in Ottawa, working for farmers in Ottawa as the Senate continues its talks on Bill C-234. Senator Black, thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this morning. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Andrea. Can you hear me? Can you just confirm that you can hear me? Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to join you today, albeit virtually. I do want to note that I join you from Ottawa, the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin people have lived here since time immemorial, and we're certainly grateful to have the opportunity to be present on this territory. As Andrea mentioned, I was supposed to be there, and I very much regret not being able to be there. And thanks, Heather, and thanks, Andrea, for your flexibility. As Bill C-234 has been noted, an act to amend the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act is in the Senate right now, and we're busy debating it at third reading. We're in the midst of an amendment that is being further debated. And I just felt I needed to be here last evening and into today. We actually rose last night after 11 o'clock, after adjournment after 11 o'clock. So it's a busy time, and especially with this bill that is so very important to farmers across this country. Your conference theme, Embracing the Opportunity, is about exploring proven management practices and encouraging proactive planning in farm business. Farm Management Canada has been at the forefront of supporting and empowering farmers across this nation. I've watched this organization for a number of years, haven't been too close to it, but certainly have watched Heather and her team do great work with Farm Management Canada. They've tirelessly worked to strengthen Canadian agriculture, urging farmers to seize opportunities and prepare for continued success. I want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible strides that have been made in Canadian agriculture in recent years. The Canadian agricultural landscape is evolving, and it's essential that we as a collective stay ahead of that curve. We've seen innovation, sustainability, resilience become the cornerstone of our industry. And it's thanks to you folks in the room and many others who are driving these changes forward. Your dedication, hard work, and an unwavering commitment to Canadian agriculture is to be commended. As some of you may know, I've worked in the agricultural industry and rural sector for over 30 years, and I do now serve in the Senate of Canada. It is an honor and a privilege to represent you folks and Ontario and Canadians in the Senate of Canada. My passion is agriculture and rural, and so that's what I do in the Senate of Canada. Whenever I'm considering a bill or an issue in my role as a senator, I must reflect, what does this mean for rural communities in Ontario and across Canada? And what does this mean for agriculture? How will it impact our farmers and ranchers and producers and processors? As the chair of the Senate Standing Committee on Agriculture and Forestry, which is known here as AGFO, I take any opportunity I can to speak at events such as this one and to meet with folks like you, farmers and others who are the backbone of the agricultural sector. Currently in AGFO, we're primarily focused on a soil health study. AGFO is uniquely placed and has the opportunity to speak with soil experts, researchers and advocates here in Canada and beyond, as well as farmers and soil health stakeholders through this study. Since we started this study in May of 2022, we've done just that. Committee members have traveled across Canada and beyond to speak to soil experts and advocates alike and to get our hands dirty. We've been able to gather an immense amount of research and information for our study, and we look forward to a forthcoming report and recommendations to the government that will flow and come from this study through the report. I might mention that the previous soil report done in 1984 by Senator Herbert Sparrow and the Ag Committee at that time, remains the most requested Senate study ever in 156 years of Senate history. So 40 years later, when our report is unveiled, I anticipate in 2024, I hope that it will have equally long-lasting interest. As one of Canada's most precious natural resources, soil conservation is top of mind for agriculture and agri-food sectors. It's top of mind for you folks. The future of this country is intrinsically linked to the health of its ecosystem, which in itself hinges on soil health. Knowing how to manage soils and understand how soils function is certainly key to their productivity and long-term sustainability. This study is a testament to our collective commitment across Canada to fostering sustainable practices and ensuring the long-term prosperity of our agricultural community. Soil health is the foundation of our industry, and understanding how to improve and maintain it is vital for the health of this nation. I want to just take a moment to thank Farm Management Canada as a whole and its respective board and staff members for hosting this conference. For over 25 years, the organization has facilitated the improvement of farm management practices through research and education, and so thank you very much for doing that. Even though I'm in attendance virtually, I want to say thank you to each of you for being at the event today. I'm delighted to see the collaboration, even just listening what your supporters and partners involved in the conference, Andrea, that's happening between business and industry in the agriculture sector, and including educators and students alike. I want to encourage each of you to embrace the opportunity, and I want to say thanks very much for your hard work, and thanks again for the invitation to attend. I appreciate the flexibility to join you online. Thanks again. Have a good conference.
Thanks so much to Senator Black for joining us today, and we really appreciate the Senator's ongoing efforts to support the industry. At this stage, I am pleased to hand things over to Heather Watson, our Executive Director. Heather will be serving as your MC for the rest of the conference, so over to Heather.
I was joking about how this is like not meant for people with walking issues. So if I go over, I blame the stage. All right, I'll click through here. So anyone knows me, I don't take things too seriously, so so yes, I am your MC. I hope I do an okay job. Before we kick things off, of course, thank you, Andrea. That was great. You saved me the morning nerves of the day, and I think you did a great job, and really happy that you're our chair. You're our fearless leader and a great member of our team, so thank you so much. And of course, thanks to Senator Rob Black. He called and apologized profusely that he couldn't come, and he's like, well, maybe I could make a flight, and maybe I could, fly overnight. And I'm like, no, like, stay in Ottawa. You're doing important things for farmers and all of us. It's totally okay, we get it. Especially since COVID, virtual is always welcome. My name's Heather Watson. I'm Executive Director of Farm Management Canada, where I lead an amazing team and part of a great board as well. Our focus is, of course, on increasing awareness, appreciation, I emphasize appreciation, and adoption of business practices on farms. And so I just wanted to kind of give, thinking about today's theme, embrace the opportunity. I won't take a lot of your time, but I just wanted to focus on this theme to kind of kick things off. And hopefully this presentation doesn't come across too morbid, but I kind of had a lot of fun coming up with it, and maybe you'll see why. So there's this quote that I've had posted on my wall for years now, and it says, change is inevitable, and then it says, growth is optional. And so I'm going to start with change is inevitable. That's kind of a constant, death and taxes, they say. Can't really get around those. Maybe in farming, the tax thing is a little bit different. We can defer them at least, but we can never totally get rid of them. But certainly I think change as well is inevitable, and we've seen lots of evidence of that. So our business environment is changing, certainly on farms, but also, even us organizations. conversations. You know, nobody's totally free from inevitable change, but I think it's about what we do with that. So this is me learning how to do transitions in PowerPoint, so bear with me. I only learned how to do one, so it's a bit repetitive, but I just kind of wanted to focus on, and again, I don't want it to come across as super negative, but things are changing, and of course, there's opportunity in that, but there's also risk, and that's why we're there, to kind of cushion the blow, but also help prepare for the unexpected. And so there's weather risks, wildfires ripping through Alberta, BC, etc. These are all headlines, by the way, from the last 2 years. Canadian farmers to reap less wheat than expected due to drought. That's another blow. That's also difficult. Food producers say they're feeling the pinch of rising costs. Probably the consumers as well. That's probably another article in there. Canada wants to cut fertilizer emissions, but farmers say it could result in less food. I remember that was a huge debate and an ongoing debate, and there were some corrections to that statement. But these are the things that we continue to face as an industry, and of course us trying to say, you know, oftentimes I think in farm business management, it's like, well, what's the point of planning when, you know, we don't know what's going to come around the corner? And certainly there's some truth in that. There's a feeling of, you know, there's so much uncertainty. How can we plan for anything? How can we count on anything? And hopefully through the course of today and the next day, we'll provide good hard evidence that it absolutely pays to plan ahead, to be proactive, and to look at risk in a comprehensive way. How can we take the bull by the horns, so to speak? This is about the carbon tax exemptions and the bill in the Senate that's being debated. Now we go into some financial pieces. So risk isn't always about the environment. I know when we talk about sustainability, oftentimes we just see green and it's not the money, it's the environment. But financial performance is a consideration as well. And I don't know if any of you saw the recent report from the Canadian. So Genevieve, I just realized, you're right, I do speak very fast, and I'm sorry for that. For our Francophone friends that are here. But the Canadian Federation of Agriculture recently came out with a farm financial health report. I hope you all had a chance to read it, because in there we talk about, you know, the connection between financial health and mental health, and overall sustainability beyond environment, but certainly inclusive of that. So confidence in the future financial performance slips in the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index, which is a new thing by the Real Ag team and Real Ag Studies, which is really awesome that we're doing that. So now we have comparable data to Purdue and Argentina, which is exciting. Net income for Canadian farmers fell 9.5% in 2022. That's real. That farm income hasn't fallen, I think, in more than 20 years. So this is a real consideration when we're thinking about what is the business environment that farmers are getting into or trying to succeed in, and how can we help? And how can we understand that and be compassionate and have empathy in that? Limited availability pushing farmland prices higher. Again, I know I'm focusing on the negative, but I think I have to, because there's a real reality here. And sometimes I think in business management, we say, well, why don't we just do this? Like, why don't you just have a business plan? Why don't you just do your transition plan? Because we're dealing with this at the same time. It's one thing after another. Higher input costs, making farming potentially out of reach of young farmers in next generation. Do we have enough young farmers? Country Guide, oh, it's my favorite resource ever, favorite magazine focused on business management, but more importantly, not just the challenges, but more so the opportunities. Labor shortages, we have representation from the Canadian Ag HR Council, and they just released a recent labor market study that shows we need more people in ag. We need temporary foreign workers, but we also need to bring more folks into Canada as permanent residents, and we need to attract others into agriculture that perhaps aren't in there, including underrepresented groups. And that's costing $3.5 billion in kind of opportunity loss, right? Like, I'd love to do these things on my farm, but I don't have the people to help me do that. Farming future in trouble unless 30,000 immigrants fill gap of retiring farmers. Almost to the end, don't worry. Women in Canada are choosing farming careers, but barriers persist. You'll hear from some lovely ladies later today on some recent work we've done in looking at the experience and the needs of farm women, but also some of the programming available. So hopefully we're making good headway there. And then, as a Black woman, it's not easy making it in Saskatchewan's ag industry. So being cognizant of underrepresented groups and how we're paving a path forward for them with positivity. And I ended with mental health here because yesterday, I don't know if you know, but we had colleagues from the Canadian Centre for Agricultural Wellbeing, as well as the Do More Agriculture Foundation, and they held what they called a Circle of Care Summit, which I thought was really awesome, and I was really proud to be a part of that because, I mean, just Circle of Care sounds so awesome as opposed to like, oh, it's a mental health symposium or it's a farmer mental health, focus group or roundtable. And so, that as they say, the struggle is real when it comes to the stress facing producers and the coping mechanisms that are being turned to. And hopefully through proactive planning and some of the risk management tools and training and things like that we're providing, but all of you in the room are providing as well, we can, certainly mitigate that risk a bit and increase confidence and increase certainty and increase positive mental health. So this is the other half of that phrase. Change is inevitable, growth is optional. So now just a little chat about growth. What got you here won't get you there. The reason I like this slide, it's a quote from Marshall Goldsmith. I love going online and looking at cool quotes, and you'll see that in a few minutes. But, the reality is that, we know most farmers didn't get into farming to be business managers per se, like growing stuff, like growing things, taking care of animals, taking care of fields, etc. But the reality is, as you saw with all those horrible headlines, but the reality is, farming does call on you to be a business manager, and that's what this conference is about. So, things might have been ticky-dee-boo and got you to where you are today, or, you're talking to your parents or your grandparents, and they're like, we're succeeding without this stuff. We're going to be fine. And then my question to you is are you? Are you really? And maybe it is time to look at change and look at doing things differently, and how can we support that and facilitate that. I'm glad that Senator Black touched on sustainability, because one of the things that we come across, which I briefly mentioned before, is, sustainability is kind of this three-legged stool, at least in my eyes and the eyes of some other people in the room that maybe I've persuaded or have persuaded me, but, like the 3 Ps, people, profit, planet, to make it simple, but environment, social or societal, and of course, economic sustainability, and how, those 3 things are invariably connected. I'm trying to think, what was that thing that you wrote to me, Steve, in an email about you can't farm in the green if you're in the red or something like that. Anyways, I totally butchered it. But basically, environmental practices have to make business sense. You can do all the environmental practices in the world, but if you're going to go broke doing it, that's not necessarily a good thing. Or if we have a mental health crisis in agriculture, which we do right now, and there's a connection to, of course, the financial vulnerability there, how can we be excited about making investments in environmental practices? Or if we're solely focused on the financial side of things, maybe we're cutting costs or cutting corners and not focusing on environmental. So they kind of all play together, and if one of those legs on the stool is not there or shorter than the others, then it's not sustainable. It's not going to last. So setting yourself up for success, this is my last little section. But, taking control by planning ahead, and that's where we look at embrace the opportunity to take a business approach to farming. So planning ahead, helping to reduce the stress and anxiety caused by uncertainty, enabling you to confront change with confidence, and of course, seize opportunities. So yeah, there's risk and uncertainty out there, but that also means competitive advantage, and how can we take calculated risks. Writing the plan down, that's huge. A lot of producer audiences I talk to, and it's no shame, but it's, who has a plan? Everybody has a plan. I know what I want to do and how I want to do it. Who has it written down? And it's like, about 20% of producers across Canada have a written business plan. So it's important to write it down, because it's not just about you anymore. Even if you're a sole proprietor, you've got family members, you've got team members. So writing it down helps facilitate those important conversations about the future of the farm and everyone's role within it. And then of course we get into talks about transition planning with Elaine and Len and some of those other folks in the room. And without things in writing, it's really hard to know what everyone wants and where you want to go, and whether you're making headway. And then it serves as that kind of roadmap. So, I mean, I would say a plan definitely isn't written in stone, but it gives you a reference point, especially when stress runs high, decision-making becomes clouded. It's kind of your roadmap, and you say, wait, what did we say we wanted to do? And is that what we still want to do, without trying to say, oh my gosh, things are crazy. What do we want to do? And maybe you're not in the right headspace for those ideas or those conversations. This was a quote we took. So in 2020, we published a national report called Healthy Minds, Healthy Farms, where we looked at the connection between mental health and farm management. And one of the persons that we interviewed in that report said about planning, he said, well, it helps to know where you want to go. That way difficult years don't seem so devastating. There's a plan in place to move forward and a vision of the future. So that kind of keeps them going, keeps them having hope. Not convinced, numbers. I love numbers, so I'm just gonna spit them out. And I don't know, maybe X or Twitter loves the numbers too, but I always like these short snippets because I remember them. I'm like, okay, 42%. So you're 42% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. So okay, we're gonna write them down then. That makes sense. Let's give ourselves the best chance for success. Farmers who prepare and follow a written plan are 5 times more profitable. Okay, cool, check that box, financial benefits, cool. Farmers who follow a written business plan experience greater peace of mind. Not saying that there is no stress anymore and mental health is totally fine, but greater peace of mind in terms of, I can get out of bed in the morning, I can sleep at night, things like that. But then also when it comes to coping mechanisms, so rather than turning to perhaps, unhealthy behaviors around addiction or isolation or there's much worse things, they've got something to say, okay, I'm going to crunch these numbers, I'm going to look at my profit margin analysis, I'm going to look at my cash flow, I'm going to look at the plan. So healthier coping mechanisms. And then lastly, those who follow a written business plan are 46% more likely to openly communicate about the future of the farm and those impacted, which when you listen to some of our speakers about leadership effectiveness, and kind of what it takes to be successful on the farm, communication is becoming more and more and more apparent as something that is a huge gap and something that we need to work on. It's amazing to have 6 different ways you can structure your business and save taxes, but if we're not at a place where we are trusting one another and we can communicate openly and effectively and honestly, that makes decision making very, very difficult. And so steps to success, I always like to end with a little bit of homework. So when I say assess your situation, I mean assess you, yourself, and I. So assess your situation in terms of where is my head right now? Am I on the verge of burnout? Do I know the signs and symptoms of burnout or stress, excessive stress? Where am I financially? Where am I in terms of what I want to do or where I want to be? Am I going back to the farm because I feel like that's the only option for me, or I feel immense pressure to keep the family legacy going? Or am I really passionate about this? Do I really want to make a go of this? And so it's really important. Oftentimes I think in business management we talk about the employees and those guys over there and those gals over there, and it's all about the team and what they're doing, and I just need help to manage those guys. But I think it's really important to reflect on yourself, and then of course turning to the others and validating that. So I think we could use a little help in terms of our financial literacy, or maybe we need to take a training course in having a safe workplace, things like that. So kind of validating, do you guys think the same thing? Are we on the same page? And there's lots of tools to do that, lots of free tools, which is great. And then identifying where you might need help. That might mean taking some training, might be hiring some advisors, et cetera, seeking outside support is not a bad thing. Surround yourself with people smarter than you. It's a great strategy. I see Dave in front of me kind of smiling at that one, because once you crack that nut and realize delegation is a wonderful tool, your life changes, believe me. And making a plan, validating that plan to make sure it makes sense, revisiting that plan, and monitoring to make sure you're on your way. And then importantly, Len Davies and I were having a talk about this, is having those. I know oftentimes, farms do have, okay, let's meet for coffee in the morning, what are we doing today? And I would say, how often are you meeting about the business? How often are you meeting to work on the business instead of just kind of in the business with the everyday, challenges or opportunities and things like that. So making a concerted effort to say, we're going to talk about the business side of farming, and maybe we're even going to go off the farm, so we're not worried about who's coming in the yard or who's in the shop and who's doing what they're supposed to or whatever, but really making time so it's the right place, it's the right people, it's the right way, and it's the right time. So I'd say embrace the opportunity, grow where you're planted. I think we all have that capacity, as hopefully you'll see today in the presentations. I'm going to stop talking now. I've probably talked way too long. This is why I don't wear a watch, because I don't want to pressure myself. But we have an amazing slate of speakers over the next 2 days. Unfortunately, this isn't last you'll hear from me, so I'll be up again this afternoon, but I'll try and be a bit more succinct. But I do want to, of course, thank you, and then I do want to welcome our keynote speaker for this morning. So this is Dave Mitchell. We had the pleasure of meeting on the elevator without knowing who each other were, and we were polite and congenial, so I think that's a good sign. So I think he's a wonderful person, even though I've... Yeah, no. Yeah, we're going to the same place, so I couldn't, get off a floor early or anything. Thought I better be nice to this guy. But I'll tell you a little bit more about Dave before he comes up to the stage here. So prior to starting his own organizational development consulting firm, The Leadership Difference, Dave was the Vice President of Human Resources and Quality for Buena Vista Hospitality Group, Corporate Director of Training and Development for Marshall Fields, and a television reporter and producer for CBS News. He has a master's degree in Global Human Resources Development and has served as adjunct professor at the University of Illinois. He also told me this morning over breakfast that he had hopes and dreams of being a professional baseball player, which I think is pretty cool. But life happens and things change, and we're glad you're here with us today. Dave is the author of a number of books, including, and when I read this, it's like, I needed to get these books. Live and Learn or Die Stupid. Interesting. The Power of Understanding People. Excellent. The Power of Understanding Yourself. I love that because it speaks to the assess yourself. And then Dave's fourth book, I don't know how you find the time, Peak Performance Culture. That's not the name of the book, that's just me commenting. So the name of the book is Peak Performance Culture, The 5 Metrics of Organizational Excellence, was released in September 2020 to critical acclaim. So without further ado, I'll welcome Dave to the stage. Please join me in welcoming Dave, and look forward to your presentation. The power is yours. You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, that was kind of a less impactful opening than I had imagined in my mind. Good morning. Good morning. There we go. I'm delighted to be here. First of all, I grew up in a rural agricultural area in the Midwest of the United States, and my hometown has 1,400 people, and it was primarily agricultural based. We did not work in ag, but I think one of the things that's often overlooked about the influence of the agricultural industry is the cottage industries that support agriculture. So my dad owned a little appliance store, did heating and air conditioning, some illegal plumbing, and generally for the agricultural community. So I'm sure it's the same way in Canada as you travel across the country, but as you travel across the United States, there's all these little towns of 200 to 2,000 people that kind of exist solely because of the need to provide an infrastructure for the agricultural community. So without you, my dad would not have been able to start his own business. I started working in that business when I was 12, so it helped me generate an entrepreneurial spirit. So lest you think that your influence is merely, as if that's a small thing, raising livestock, growing crops, feeding the world, you also create a whole economy for other people to pursue dreams and passions that may be on the surface unrelated to agriculture, but would not exist but for you. So a little sad for me to applaud all of you, so if you'll indulge me and applaud yourselves, thank you for everything that you do. I feel compelled to address something Heather said about my aspirations to be a professional baseball player. That is true. That was my initial career path. It's a bit of a tragic tale. After my sophomore year of college baseball, the training staff discovered a large lack of talent. And it was inoperable. There was nothing that could be done. It had gone undetected for too long. Anyway, that's how I ended up in broadcasting, literally, because I was 20 years old and had no major, and I had taken a lot of speech comm classes because, frankly, they were easy, and so I figured, well, most retired athletes go into broadcasting, it seems, so I went into broadcasting. Hated it, so a year later, I went into training and development because somehow a company thought, well, if you spoke on television, you'd be a great trainer. It was a kind of an odd transfer of talents, but it paid more, so I took that job and eventually became the Vice President of Human Resources and Quality for a division of Walt Disney World down in Orlando. So, I mean, it's a cautionary tale of not being too bummed when your plans don't work out, because sometimes what you really need to do happens because of what you viewed as adversity in your life. So I'm here before you because of a lack of talent in my first choice, right? So, anybody heard of Walla Walla, Washington? I'm from Walla Walla, Washington. That's where I live now. It's a town so nice we named it twice. The Chamber of Commerce requires me to do that every time I present. Anyway, well, so Walla Walla is a magical agricultural area. We're known for many years. We grow a lot of wheat and a lot of alfalfa. That's not sexy. It was the sweet onions for a long time. Onions so sweet you can eat them like an apple. Asparagus. But now, Washington is the second largest producer of wine in the United States, one of the largest wine regions in the world. And Walla Walla is the Napa of Washington wines. We're the epicenter of the wine industry of Washington. So there are 150 wineries around the town of Walla Walla. Walla Walla has 35,000 people. 35,000 people, 150 wineries. So most Saturdays you'll find us naked in a drainage ditch, basically, because we are struggling to support this wine industry. In the summer it's fine because everybody comes from all around the world, but in the winter, Walla Walla winters are probably not unlike Toronto winters, kind of damp and cold, and so a lot of people don't travel, so we have to pick up the slack. I have a part ownership in one of those wineries because we were not bleeding out fast enough with the horses that we owned. So I thought, let's get involved in a winery. So that's why I'm still doing this at my age. But I bring this up because we're going to talk about peak performance culture, and I'm going to use some examples from the prominent agricultural commodity in my hometown, which is wine grapes and vineyards, because it helps you kind of understand how some of these things apply to an industry that historically hasn't talked about the types of concepts that you'll see in corporate America. But to Heather's point, that is rapidly changing. Farming, like every other industry, is now becoming more scalable, operating on bigger operational models, and with that comes all these not just expectations, but really requirements to install best business practices in the operations so that you can continue to compete in this increasingly aggressive world that you're going to find yourself in. So culture, has everybody heard the term culture? Peak performance culture? So when you're the vice president of a division of Walt Disney World, everybody wants you to come and talk about culture because that's kind of Disney's legacy, right? The culture that we created. And honestly, when you work inside Disney, you're kind of oblivious to the culture. I mean, you snort a lot of pixie dust at Disney, so you get in there, but you're not exactly sure how it happened, right? It's like being in a cult. It's like one day I just woke up and admired an animated mouse. I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. And so when people would ask me to speak about culture, I try to figure out, well, how do you do that when you don't have cartoon characters to worship? I mean, what is culture? And I started asking other people, well, you're asking me to speak about culture. What is that in your mind? And I wasn't getting very good definitions. It was one of those things like, I'll know it when I see it, or I read it in a book and I know it's important, so I want it here, but I don't know what it is, so we hired you to talk about it. And I tell them, I don't know what it is either, but I'm happy to get paid to talk about it. And this went on for a long time. I started my company in 1995, and it wasn't until my fourth book, Peak Performance Culture, that I decided to try to define and make tangible this concept of culture. So what I'm going to do for the next hour or so is try to define and make tangible and provide some very simple things you can do right away that would influence your culture and that would start to install an intentional culture. Because what I'm telling you is you already have a culture, but if you haven't been intentional about it, it may not be the culture that you want. Because cultures find vacuums. If you don't think and work hard at creating the culture that you want, another culture will fill that vacuum. And that culture may not be the one you want and may not be beneficial to the operation and to your success long term. So does that sound like something you'd be interested in? Yes. Yeah? Is that good? Yes. Yeah. You're kind of looking at me like you're holding out for something else. That's really all I have, actually. Nick asked me to talk about it. If you have a problem, take it up with Nick. All right. Oh, my goodness. Oh, look, there's the first of what will happen to be many gratuitous marketing moments where I put an image of my book up there so you can rush out to Amazon and buy it. Do you know that Jeff Bezos can sell my book cheaper than I can buy my own book? That really pisses me off, I gotta tell you. That's not right. Okay. This hot mess, and my daughter, God love her, she's 33, she's a marketing manager, and she has a graphic arts background, and she just looks at that and shakes her head and say, Dad, ask me for help. But this is what culture in my mind looks like. Now, that hot mess, I'm gonna break it down, so don't worry if you look at that and like, well, that didn't help at all, Dave. We're gonna do it in pieces. So you see that first area, horizontal alignment. Let me kind of pull that out. Horizontal alignment is the easiest part of culture. So if you have not done this, that's where you want to begin. And if you have done this, you still need to revisit it every year, much to what Heather's point was about the plan and revising the plan and making sure the plan reflects any recent information that might alter where you're headed. But basically, there's three elements. What's the market environment, which very simply is all of you, any business owner, should be keenly aware of what the heck is going on out there. So you're always paying attention to headlines. You're always doing research. You're always talking to your competitors. You're talking to your suppliers. You're talking to your customers. You always want to understand the market forces and even global events, right? I mean, certainly in agriculture, you can be tremendously impacted by big macro issues like climate change, like global politics, right? Embargoes, things like that. So on the other side is what I call the success scoreboard, which sounds odd, and I imagine most of you have this clearly defined, but you would be surprised how many businesses I work with that when I ask them, how will you know when you're successful, cannot articulate that easily. They make some reference to, well, we'll be making money. It's like pretty much a given, but how much and at what cost? And beyond profitability, how about efficiency? In 2007, 70% of my clients were in or largely influenced by the mortgage industry. By 2009, none of my clients were. I went to insurance and pharma, basically. But all of those people in 2007 thought they were really good. And by 2009, they were working in fast food. Because they weren't really good, they benefited from a robust market. and they got fat and happy, and they didn't put any structures in to be disciplined, to make sure that they were efficient, to make sure that they could react to sudden downturns in demand. So they were basically reliant on robust demand for profitability, and that's a dangerous, dangerous situation. So your success scoreboard should have a balance of profitability and efficiency. How do we make money but also protect ourselves in the event that the conditions change and I have to tighten my belt? I would rather make less money than to lose money, right? I don't want to go in the red, I just want to go in the green smaller if things have a turn down. So connecting those things is what's called your core ideology. Whether you know it or not, whether your farm is a massive operation or basically a family-owned business that's been handed down through generations, you have a core ideology. The question is it the one that I want, and is it the one that's going to make me successful, right? So let me just quickly define these terms, because they get thrown around a lot: passion, vision, mission, strategy. By the way, I am distinctly pragmatic. I call myself a sarcastic optimist. I am the product of my father. My father fought in World War II with General Patton. He survived the Depression. He raised me as an only parent. He was not a man that was prone to emotional displays other than anger. I think that's the only one I actually saw. When I had a bad day at school and I'd tell him, he'd say, "Cheer up, it gets worse." So that's kind of my vibe. You know, it's like I can't do social media because I have an overwhelming compulsion to reply to every Facebook post. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. I will tell you this, though. It's a heck of a lot easier to work your butt off if you feel passionate about what you do. And success, unless you happen to be born into a very wealthy family, and I am still looking for my true parents, success is hard. Success takes a lot of work. Success is exhausting. I can't imagine trying to have a lifetime of success in a vocation for which I have no passion. So passion really is the cornerstone of a culture. You have to be passionate about it. Now, don't romanticize passion. I'm passionate about what I do, and it still sucks quite often, right? I get in flight delays. You know, tomorrow is Thanksgiving in the United States. I've got to get from Toronto back to Walla Walla, which is not an easy thing to do, which with the rest of, you know, the personal hell of a business traveler is leisure travelers. And the airports are lousy with them right now. They're just thick out there, right? So I'm passionate about what I do, but I still get angry about it. I still have days when it's like, oh, kill me now. So don't mistake passion for some kind of state of continuous bliss. It's not. It's just that you feel inspired by doing what you do. And actually that inspiration is what makes you willing to tolerate the hardships and the occasional barriers that you'll face, right? So passion is the values or behaviors that define us along our journey. It's our social contract. It's how we're going to behave in all of this. Let me back it up. I like this analogy. The vision for your organization, for your farm, for your operation, for your company is the destination. Where do we want to be? We still do a lot of 10-year planning, 5-year planning. I think a lot of that is stupid. This world is so dynamic that I can't imagine being able to anticipate 5 years down the road. I'm a one-year guy. Just try to figure out where do I want to be at the end of next year, right? And then work for that. Trying to anticipate 5 years out. Are you familiar with AI? I spoke, I guess it's about a month ago now, in Boston to the National Association of State Technology Directors. These are people in the United States, in every state, that are responsible for managing technology in the state through the political channels. So they're not elected officials, but they work for elected officials to manage the technology in the state. And the speaker before me was an artificial intelligence guy. And he's explaining artificial intelligence. And if you're familiar with it, we're currently in the machine learning stage, which is artificial intelligence is learning based on the input it's getting. That's why now, used to it would spell check if you ask it to spell check. Now it's spell checking live, and it's also suggesting how you finish that sentence. So that's machine learning. It's starting to get a feel for you. Next step will be the theory of the mind. Theory of the mind. That's when AI understands how you think and the context of the situation. Oh, you're sorrowful because you're writing a note to someone who's lost a loved one, so that changes and alters the tones in the language, right? That's just one small example. But now theory of the mind means it learns how to think. The next stage is self-awareness, when it thinks on its own. So I asked the question, how do we stop AI at theory of the mind before it reaches self-awareness? Because objectively, the biggest threat to the planet is us. So any other intelligence would certainly take the necessary steps to eradicate us. So let's kind of dial that back. And you know what the answer was? We don't know. We've never gotten this far, which just scares the shit out of me, right? So when you talk about do a 5-year plan, well, do I need to get Arnold Schwarzenegger back from Terminator? I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. 1 year at a time, figure out what's going on, and then do another plan next year, adjust the plan, do what's necessary. So the vision is the destination. The mission is the secret sauce. What's different about us? That's the vehicle. What are we going to take to get to this destination? And the strategy is the map, right? So every year you should have, this is our destination for this year. This is the vehicle with which we're going to take to get there, and this is the direction how we're going to go, the map, the strategy, okay? All the time agreeing that this is the social contract we have for our behaviors. This is how we're going to deal with each other. So those are the elements of the passion, vision, mission, strategy, the core ideologies. Does that all make sense? Okay, let me give you an example. So back to Walla Walla, 150 wineries, 35,000 people. We also have 3 colleges. One college has a viticulture and enology program, which they typically, and I'm the chairman of the business advisory committee for that college. Typically, they have 12 to 15 students enrolled in that track. When you graduate from that track, you are now prepared, theoretically, to make wine and open a winery. Of the 12 to 15 people that take that course every year, at least half, so let's say 6, would like to open a winery in Walla Walla because it is the hot spot. It is, the cost of entry is smaller. It's a very charming rural community that has a lot of more upscale amenities because of the tourism. So it's a great place to try to start your business. What's the problem? Land and, oh, there's 150 other people already in this industry. So you've got cost of entry, but you've also got incredible competitive pressures. And if you ever get a chance, if you head to Kelowna and just head south for like a 6-7 hour drive, of those 150 wineries, I'd say 100, and I'm a certified advanced wine sommelier as well, so I take it upon myself to do a lot of research. 146 of them make excellent wines. I am not going to itemize the 4 that don't. I'm just saying it's really hard to have bad wine in Walla Walla. So now you're entering a market that is saturated with excellent competitors. So the only thing that's going to distinguish you is your core ideology. You can't really say I make better wine. You're not guaranteed a better location because obviously 150 people have preceded you here. They probably didn't overlook the greatest place. So you've got to distinguish yourself with this core ideology. Here's an example of 2. I love this. They'll help you understand kind of a way core ideology distinguishes the business. Cayuse. Anybody here heard of Cayuse wines? 2 people. That's so sad. We do such a woeful job in Washington of promoting our wines. Arguably, Cayuse is probably the most revered wine in Walla Walla. It was started by Christophe Baron, a French man straight out of central casting. If we were at Disney and we were looking for an arrogant French winemaker, Christophe would fit it perfectly. And I know Christophe well, and he would call himself, I am an arrogant French winemaker. He's also somewhat of a sexist, womanizer. My lovely bride is the tasting room manager of another winery called Dama, which is all women made, all women owned, all women staff. So obviously the arrogant French womanizing winemaker is there a lot. So I see him every time I come to visit my wife. Oh, Christophe is here having a glass, of course. Anyway, very charming, very charismatic. He comes to Walla Walla having been trained by his family in Champagne. He does a spell in the Willamette Valley near Portland as a Pinot Noir maker. He decides he wants to open a winery in Walla Walla. He sees this old apple vineyard full of these big rocks the size of a baby's head, because we were the scene of the Missoula flood back 12,000 years ago. So we got parts of our valley has these big deposits of rocks that just populate the entire soil, right? When those rocks heat up, they just destroy the crops. They destroy fruit, they destroy everything. That makes it largely unfarmable. So here's this orchard with all these nasty apples that burned up on the tree for sale. Christophe buys that orchard, despite the protestations of the guy who owned it. He said, seriously, dude, it's awful. You can't grow anything on this. But Christophe knows that grapes are like people. They get better when they face adversity. I never trust someone who's had it easy their whole life. I like someone who's had to struggle, because the best grapes are ones that struggle on the vine and make the most complex wines. So Christophe knew, if I can grow grapes in this vineyard, which, by the way, looked a lot like Châteauneuf-du-Pape in France, which is renowned for its Grenache, its Syrah, its Mourvedre, and some other grapes, right? Then this is going to make great wine. He bet on that. He was right. His first vintage got a 99 from Wine Spectator. And since then, every year like clockwork, the critics adore his wines. So I don't ask you to read this. I put it up there. Just, the stones hold the secret, right? That's what he says is his ideology. He's basing his special sauce on these stones and rocks, right? But here's really his special sauce, hidden down here. Cayuse creates at least a dozen critically lauded wines each year, available as wine futures. Now, what does it mean when something's available as a wine future? Yeah, you can't have it now, right? You can buy a future bottle of wine, okay? But the list to buy a wine that has not yet been made is currently full. Click here to add your name to a wait list to buy a wine that I have not yet made. So basically, Christophe is the wine Nazi. No wine for you. You can't. You know how long it takes to get on the wait list? 3 years. So you're on the wait list for the wait list for 3 years. Then it's 3 more years before you actually get wine. So when you click and enter your name, you are going to get a wine in 6 years, if you're lucky. He has sold every bottle of wine he has ever made, with what is a very counterintuitive ideology, right? I make excellent wine and you can't have any. He has a tasting room, but what's really interesting, this is on another page. Oh, I didn't put that one there. On another page of his, I think maybe it's on here. Thank you for your interest in Cayuse Vineyards. I'll read it, it's very small. Due to the demands in the vineyards and wine studio, we regret that we are not able to offer tours or tastings. Please don't hesitate to contact us with other requests. What other requests would somebody have? Can I taste your wine? No. Can I buy your wine? No. Can I tour your wine? No. And by the way, due to what's going on in the vineyards, there's nothing going on in the vineyards that's different than the other 149 wineries who all offer tours and tastings, right? So this is an incredible, I mean, it's brilliant, right? It's just, he creates this mythology of this amazing wine that you'll never get. And so he has a tasting room downtown that's never open, but he keeps that building. And it says Cayuse. I shouldn't say it's never open. Prior to COVID, it was open one day a year. It was called Cayuse Weekend. And so many people would flock into Walla Walla to pick up their wines because, oh, by the way, I didn't mention this, he doesn't ship. He doesn't ship. You can make arrangements. If you want to make arrangements, I'll follow the arrangements. I'll have it ready for FedEx to pick up. Otherwise, you come here and pick it up. Walla Walla. Walla Walla. It's not like we have an international airport. We have 2 flights a day to Seattle and back, right? That weekend was so popular, all 149 other wineries had Cayuse weekend specials, right? We would actually piggyback, I guess, or grab the coattails of Christophe Baron because he pulled so many people in. It's brilliant. Now, here's the thing. The Rocks region, which is now its own little appellation in Walla Walla, where these big stones are, is bigger than Christophe's property. So he didn't buy up all the rocks, he bought up this one little area, but now other winemakers have figured out, okay, I'm going to put vineyards in that area. One of them is called Sleight of Hand. Sleight of Hand is right next door to Cayuse, vineyard-wise. There's their core ideology, serious wines without serious attitudes. You think that's targeting anybody in particular? And you see there, that's on the left is Trey Bush, and on the right is his winemaker, whose name escapes me for now. It's not Jerry, somebody else. But anyway, Trey was a lead singer in a punk band. He's a big fan of grunge rock. When you walk into his tasting room, the first thing he says is, pick out an album that matches your mood. Now, your mood was almost always going to have to be punk rock or classic rock or grunge rock because that's all he's got on his wall, but whatever. And he's going to play that record while he does your tasting. Crazy parties, crazy dinners. It's my lovely bride and I always go to Sleight of Hand when there's a special weekend. His wife is a burlesque dancer. It's an interesting follow on Instagram. I mean, it is like the complete antithesis. His wines are very good. Christophe's very good. They both have really high levels of success in a very competitive industry with 2 completely different ideologies. The point here is, it's not the ideology you pick, it's your commitment to the ideology, right? People worry so much, like, well, what would be the right special sauce? Just have a special sauce. What's your personality? Who are you? What do you want to create with your business? Be an extension of you, right? In this case, the core ideology of Sleight of Hand is this fun, free-spirited, rock and roll party atmosphere that's a reflection of Trey Bush. In the case of Cayuse, it's this, elitism, exclusivity. You don't deserve it, prove it. You got to make sure, I got to see your loyalty before I give you anything, which is very Christophe Baron. Those are the easiest ideologies to implement into your culture because you're not doing anything different. It's a reflection of you. Does that make sense? Yeah? I know I'm one of those irritating guys that actually wait for you to respond when I ask that. It's not a rhetorical question. Okay. All right. Great. So very simply, all I would tell you to do is once a year, look at the current state of your organization, talk about what is the desired state that we want within the next year, and try to create a map, a plan, a strategy to connect the 2. That's not the only thing there is to create horizontal alignment, but it's a good start. Are we being true to ourselves? I see so many companies, small companies, large companies, that chase the competition or chase what they believe are market changes, and they lose their authenticity along the way. Try to remain authentic to who you are as an organization, and then the market finds you. This is the easiest part of culture, sadly. Depending on the size of, have you heard the term scalability? That's another big buzzword in business, scalability. Scalability really is just how do you expand your operation to deal with the complexities of growth? Can you take what's worked for you on small scales and make it bigger? Just keep expanding it. Will it still work? And that's, in my parlance, called vertical alignment, meaning that every part of your organization creates an experience that matches what you say is your core ideology, right? So you have to start looking at all your systems. Do I have a system for training and development? Do I have a system for performance appraisal? Do I have a system for business development, compensation? If I do they align with what I say is my core ideologies? Do I walk the talk, right? There is nothing more irritating to me than organizations that say they are one thing but feel very different to work there. And I don't know if this translates across the border, but I do a lot of work in the insurance industry. Have you ever heard the phrase, you're in good hands? Yeah, when I say that, who do you think of? That one's Allstate, and they would die of death. State Farm is like a good neighbor. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is. Does State Farm sell in Canada? No. I ask people in the United States all the time, did you have a claim with State Farm? Because they're not my client, Allstate is. So, and they said yes. I'm like, did it feel like it was handled by a good neighbor? I'm like, no. I'm like, that's vertical misalignment. So what you say you are, so that's basically just a marketing tool. There's a difference between marketing tools and core ideologies. Don't confuse those two, right? So vertical alignment is this relentless pursuit to create an organization that actually delivers an experience that you say matches your core ideology, all the way down to the individuals. So the more you align, the more obvious individuals that don't fit become. How many of you employ more than 5 people? A few of you, okay. How many of you right now, if I ask you to picture all the people you employ lined up like in a police lineup, if you walked down that line and looked each of the people you employ in the eye, would say there's at least one that if I ask you, knowing what you know now, would you hire them again, that you'd say no? Is there at least one? I saw your hand go up and down, yeah. So that's an example of misalignment. That's one person in your organization or more that is not exhibiting the core ideologies of the organization. Now, not to ruin your day, but the longer that persists, the more damage that misalignment is occurring. Because, as you know, if you're a leader, it's not what you say, it's what you tolerate. Right? The standard is not what you say it is, it's what they're allowed to do. So, nothing real sexy about, I want to get to the sexy stuff. I really wanted something cool for the book here. You know, you do all this research. Has anybody here written a book before? It really, you should do it. I wrote this one during COVID, which, you know, COVID, when your job is to present in front of groups of people that have all, you know, come together in one room, also known as a plague during COVID, right? If we all got together, that's why we couldn't do that. So it's a very depressing time to be a speaker during COVID. Now I'm writing a book. When you write a book, you write it 7, 8 times. The whole book, that's not chapter by chapter, you write even more times. Then you give it to a development editor who tells you how much it sucks. And then you rewrite it, and you rewrite it, and then finally you give it to one more editor who then marks up the grammar. And then you finally release it when you couldn't hate it anymore. And then the publisher says, okay, now do the audio book, where you get to go into a studio and read the book you hate out loud while they play it back and say, can you have more enthusiasm? It's really, I mean, if you have any degree of self-hatred now, this will take it to the next level, right? But I really wanted something sexy for this segment because, you know, you write a book, you want to rock people's world. What I discovered was the one most important thing for vertical alignment are really good job descriptions. How many of you have job descriptions for all the work in your operation? I see 2 hands. If I could give you an assignment that you'll hate me for, I want you to go back and think about, even if they aren't separate jobs, even if like one person does 2 or 3 jobs, which is very common in small operations, I want you to start thinking about all the things that have to be done for this operation to work. And I want you to try to think about them in terms of a job. It may very well be that you do 3 of those jobs, but think about them in terms of a job. Itemize each of these things that you have to do, and try to also add, how well must you do it? What is my expectation? What is the standard for that task? This will take you the better part of 2024 probably, but when you're done, when you expand, when you grow, when you hire someone for a job, you can now show them this is exactly the job that you're going to need to be doing. This is how well you need to do it. So you have now created a way to interview and recruit people, a way to train people, and a way to appraise people. So you are starting to line up all these things just because you have a good document of what we do here. And it is not fun, it is very tedious, and for most major corporations, they have not done this since 1990 in the United States, when the Americans with Disabilities Act passed, and we were forced to do job descriptions so that we could determine what were essential functions of a job and what were elements of the job that we can make some reasonable accommodations for someone who had a disability. Other than that, most corporations in the United States have never really worked on job descriptions. And I'm here to tell you, as inane as they sound, maybe the single most important single document you can have in your operation is just knowing what everybody's responsible for doing and how well it needs to be done. All right, not sexy. Let's go to something more sexy. Customer experience. I'm going to talk about customers in a more traditional way. I know the farm customer can be wildly different, so there has to be maybe some interpretation of what I'm about to say. But I will tell you this, the number one threat to a business is satisfied customers. Oh? Isn't that what we're going for, Dave? You shouldn't be. Case in point, flew to Miami. My client arranged a car to take me to the hotel where I was going to be staying. Very, very nice of them to do that. Didn't want me to have to deal with rental cars or the Miami traffic. I get to my airport, I have a text from the driver. The driver will meet you in baggage claim. My name is something I don't remember now. I will have a sign with your name on it. Okay, I get off the plane, I go to baggage claim. Sure enough, there's a guy standing there, Dave Mitchell. I walk up to him. He goes, "Are you Dave?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Come with me." He takes me to his car, puts my bags in the back. I get in the back seat. He drives me 15, 20 minutes to the hotel, drops me off at the hotel. I wave goodbye. End of transaction. Hour later, I get an email. "Thank you for your patronage with ABC Transportation," not their real name. "We would like for you to take a short survey to measure your satisfaction." Well, this is what I do. This is research, of course, yes. First question. Did the driver pick you up at the appropriate location? And it's a Likert scale. You know what a Likert scale is? That's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the way, if you ever do a Likert scale, always have an odd number, never do always have an even number, never do odd numbers. Never give people the middle. Don't give them a 3 on a 5-point scale. That gives you nothing, right? I don't know what to do with that. 3. Does that mean no opinion? Does that mean, nah, what is 3? So always do 1, 2, 3, 4. But they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But here's my problem. Did the driver pick you up at the appropriate location? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is this a matter of feet? I mean, is this like, you know, I mean, did baggage pickup seem like the right place to me? That's fine. 5. It's fine. I mean, I can't come to the gates. That seems like that's the right place. Yeah. Was he professionally attired? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now, like a fashion consultant, I'm like, Well, I'm not big on the navy blue pants with the black shoes. I would have went with brown, but I mean, he didn't look sketchy. 5. Was the car clean and neat? 5. Did the driver drop you off at your desired location? 5. Thank you for your time today. And I started thinking someone is in charge of customer satisfaction. And they're going to have a meeting with the CEO of ABC Transportation. And with great pride and probably a 57-deck PowerPoint, they're going to go over the customer satisfaction scores. We have 93% customer satisfaction based on those 4 questions. But what's the problem? None of this compels me to use ABC Transportation ever again. In fact, honestly, I don't remember the name of the company. They left absolutely no impression on me. What they basically measured was competency. Pretty much the expectation was you'd pick me up where I asked you to, you wouldn't look like you're going to abduct me, you wouldn't throw me in the back of a microbus, and you wouldn't drop me off 5 miles from my hotel. I mean, none of these were like key metrics that wowed me. And yet over and over and over again, I see these types of satisfaction metrics where they're basically measuring the fundamental elements of the transaction. Being able to execute the fundamental elements of a transaction is not something to be proud of. That's basically the expectation, right? So customer satisfaction is a mirage. It is a red herring. It is not an important metric. We want people that are evangelists, right? That love us, that refer people to us, that mention our name when someone says, hey, who do you work with that you love, right? So I just started to think about customers as evangelists, satisfied, unsatisfied, and heretics. Heretics. Here's how my dad described heretics. She didn't chew my butt out, she chewed around it and let it fall out. That's a heretic. I would argue that of those 4, the most dangerous are the satisfied and the unsatisfied. The satisfied because they say they're happy, but if someone offers them a better deal, off they go. Cheaper price, more convenient, an added amenity, an added service for the same amount of money, off they go. Unsatisfied never tell us they're unsatisfied. They don't fill out the survey, they just never come back, right? Those 2 customers are the most dangerous. I want everybody to be either an evangelist or a heretic, which means I have to be aggressive in asking for feedback. I have to make you talk to me. I want the feedback. Be honest. Give it to me. So the most successful cultures develop feedback tools that make executives uncomfortable, because there is nothing more dangerous than a customer satisfaction. By the way, though, if you're teaching people to go aggressively get information, careful what you wish for, right? People say, okay, well, I'm going to tell you why I'm not happy. Great. Good. Now, we can't always choose how they do that. And it'd be nice. I mean, I know I'm in Canada. You're renowned globally for being polite and nice people. But I don't know. I don't have this on good authority, and I've never personally experienced it, but I'm guessing there's probably at least 7 assholes in Canada. Maybe you ran across them. Because it's amazing how few 7 seem, but they seem to get everywhere. Anyway, if you get a hold of one of those, you better know how to handle that situation, right? So I tell organizations, look, there's certain training programs you have to do. You don't have a choice. You have to teach people how to be leaders before you put them in leadership roles, or you're going to destroy your organization like a cancer. You have to teach people how to handle upset customers before they have to do it, or they're going to quit on you, or they're going to cause damage to the customer. It's very simple training. Listen and don't respond, no matter how much you know what to do right now, because generally when a customer is unhappy and they start telling you why they're unhappy, you know 2 sentences in what went wrong and what needs to be fixed. Just shut up. I don't know if you know much about boxing. There was a boxer came up in the 60s, really big in the 70s, even into the 80s, called Muhammad Ali. Have you heard of this man? Towards the end of his career, he was starting to lose a lot of his speed and finesse and power. He had a pretty good jab left, and he could still move and bob a little bit, but he was starting to wane in his powers. And at the same time, there was a young boxer coming up, a guy named George Foreman. Have you heard of him? George Foreman was basically Mike Tyson with boxing skills at that age. This is before he started hawking grills and stuff. So everybody was pretty sure that when Ali scheduled a fight with Foreman, that Foreman would literally kill Ali. I mean, there was concerns for Ali's health. And yet Ali not only survived the bout, he won the bout, exercising a strategy that he would call rope-a-dope. And rope-a-dope was he leaned back into the ring ropes and covered up everything that was fairly vulnerable and let Foreman wail on him for 3-4 straight rounds. 12, 16 minutes of relentless pummeling from Foreman while Ali did this and just occasionally jabbed back just so he wouldn't be counted out. Well, I don't know if any of you have ever boxed, but if you throw hundreds of punches a minute for 16 minutes, what happens? You get tired. And the difference between here and here in boxing is big, particularly if your opponent has a good jab. So the last few rounds of the fight, Foreman spent doing this. And, you know, it's like being stung by millions of bees. The first one doesn't hurt, second one doesn't hurt, third one doesn't hurt, fourth one, okay, oh my, and he was done. Now, that analogy works pretty good with customers right up to when you turn around and start punching them back. That's where you got to stop that analogy. But you want to lean back and take the criticism because a lot of this bile and emotion just needs to come out. And once it's out, then the magic word, I am so sorry you had that experience. When you apologize, it is deflating to any remaining anger. They realize, and most people, most sane people, most reasonable people, even if they're angry, midway through the anger, they start to have an out-of-body experience where they say, oh my God, I'm the asshole. Right? They start to realize I'm the one that's the problem here now. And they even start saying things like, I'm sorry, it's not your fault, I'm just frustrated, right? So if you can just let them vent, then apologize, then solve this for them however it works mutually, and thank them for the feedback. Listen, apologize, solve, thank. That's all you have to do to handle a heretic. And by the way, here's something interesting. Heretics don't go from heretic to unsatisfied. Heretics don't go from heretics to satisfied. Heretics go from heretics to evangelists because they already had the passion. They were just disappointed. The reason they had the passion is they had such high expectations for you and you didn't come through. So if you change that, they go right to the top of the list. All right. Employee experience. Oh, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. So in the book, this is only the second reference to the book. That's not bad. There's some sacred cows that I attack as a human resources professional. I do not like corporate values. Now, for those of you that have ever worked in the corporate world, many organizations, if you go into their break room or their cafeteria, they have a big poster up there, and then the poster has these words. These are our values, right? And they're almost always the same everywhere I go. You know, like care, communicate, teamwork. And I'm thinking, isn't that kind of fundamentally expected? I mean, did we actually go out there and go, you know what, I've been talking to people out in the workplace, and I think what I want to do is hire someone who cares, who can communicate, and is a good teammate. Radical. And by the way, those words are very interpretive. And by the way, like integrity, when I see integrity up there, I'm like, I guarantee you, your CEO has a 50-50 shot at integrity. And I'm being generous. And everybody in the company knows it, right? When they're up there like, just in keeping and consistent with our corporate value of integrity. And they're like, oh, that's the guy that cheats on his wife. Okay, yeah, sure, yeah, no, that seems reasonable. I don't like values. I think it gets really cultish. You know, I like values. I like personal values. I have values. You have values. We have places we can go with people may have similar values to talk about that, but it's not work. Work, I don't want work in my values, right? My values are mine. Now, behaviors, if you tell me how to behave, what your expectation is how I behave, that's fine. I can choose not to work here if I don't want to behave that way, but you have every right, if you have the money, to tell me how to behave, not how to think. I'll tell you one behavior that you should look for in anybody that you hire. And I'll tell you the interview question to ask them to see if they have it. The behavior is an internal locus of control. And here's how I would describe it, and if you're a psychologist, I'm sorry if I don't capture the essence quite accurately, but this is my interpretation of that characteristic. It starts with this assumption. Life is a honey badger. Life is like shingles. Life doesn't care. It's just going to happen. It doesn't care what gender you are, how old you are, how much money you have, what kind of car you drive. Life's coming at you. Some people get more breaks than others, just happen that way. Other people seem to have stepped in a pile of karma poop when they were 3 and they can't scrape it off their shoes. But we're all navigating this amorphous, uncaring thing called life. So if you're going to blame life, it's going to be a long, hard road for you. You're much better off for everything that happens to you saying, that's on me. What do I need to do to fix this? What do I need to do to get this going in the right direction? Is it always your fault? No, but you'll be a lot happier and a lot better performer if you said, but it happened. So now that it's happened, what am I going to need to do to fix it? You can spend a lot of time blaming stuff outside of you, but that doesn't fix anything. So when it happens, and it will happen, on me. If it affects me, it's on me. Even if I was not necessarily culpable for it, I'm going to assume responsibility for it. That is the single greatest characteristic that my dad instilled in me. It is the single most important characteristic that I think any parent can instill in their child. And if you're an employer, it is the single greatest characteristic you want your employees to manifest. And here's how I tend to discern that. It's not a perfect science, but in the job interview, unless they're really incompetent at job interviews, people try to put their best foot forward. So when you're asking questions in a job interview, you're getting the best them that they aspire to. Not even that they can create, that they in their mind, I could be that. So when you're falling in love with them, particularly if you're shorthanded, which most of the world is right now, and you're just begging, please give me a reason to hire you, just ask them this question before it's over. Tell me about a time you disappointed your boss. Or if they're young, your parents. Here's what's going to happen. I'll prepare you for this. I've done this thousands of times in my career. This is what's going to happen. Exactly. So, tell me about a time you disappointed your boss. Now, by the way, for those of you that have ever had a boss, did you ever disappoint the boss? Did you ever disappoint your parents? If there's anybody here that has never disappointed a parent or a boss, please raise your hand. Okay, so either I'm talking to some very incompetent farm management people, or we have all disappointed our parents or our boss at some time. I'm inclined to believe the latter, right? So we know the person in front of us has disappointed either their boss or their parents. We know that. But they do not want to reveal this. So what you're going to get is, oh, wow. I mean, I work hard, you know, I care a lot, and you can count on me. And I think if you talk to my boss, that's what she'd say. And then what you're going to do is reserve the temptation to move forward, because that's the tennis strategy. The tennis strategy is you serve, they volley back, won the point. You're just going to stand there, sit there in silence and look at them because both of you know that's a lie. This in a job interview, terrifying. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm sure there's probably been something, where I missed the mark a bit, but nothing major. Nothing memorable, nothing I can think of. I struggle with cocaine and I miss a lot of work, if that's what you mean. Eventually they crack. Yeah, the cocaine thing's probably a deal breaker, although we're pretty aggressive right now trying to make sure we find help. But, and in the wine industry, it's like, you're hired. That's what we're looking for, someone that works 22 hours a day. But no, they'll eventually, if they're smart, they're going to pick low-hanging fruit, right? They're going to come up with something that seems not too devastating. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. Obviously, if it's severe, that matters. But I want to hear how they frame that. If they go, well, I did have this one customer that wasn't happy with me, but in my defense, my boss never taught me how to do that, or it was actually another employee that caused the problem, and I'm the one that got blamed for it. If I hear all that stuff, that tells me the first time I need to coach that person, I need to correct that person, this is what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear who else was the problem, not me. So that person's not coachable, going back to my baseball days. I want to hear someone that says, all right, I got that, I learned from that, I know what I did wrong, I know what I need to do better. Sometimes it takes them a while to get to it, but if I hear any evidence that they own it, they accept it, that they know that their responsibility in that situation is what's important to take away, hire that person. Because, this is kind of my mantra, unless it's like neurosurgery or something, there's a few things, like I want my pilot to have some pretty good skill-based training on the way home. But for most jobs, I'm going to hire the character and train the skills. I can train you how to do this, but I do not want to be your parent. And honestly, after about the age of 22 to 26, 22 for a woman, 26 for a man, we're a little slower cognitively developing, you're not going to fix it. I know that sounds horrible, and I get a lot of pushback, but once someone hits around 30, I don't want to be their parent, and I know that I got no shot at this point. I'm trying to undo 30 years of stuff. It's not likely, and I don't have the time or the interest. So hire character, train skills, lead their style, right? That's a whole nother conversation, style. So we talk about internal locus control, teamwork, which is just people that are comfortable working with people across job responsibilities. Very often we create good teams of people that do the same thing, but they don't work well with people that do other things. In the conventional business world, the salespeople and the operations people often have a big seam. So you want people that can work well with people across those seams. People that resolve conflict effectively, and people that know when you're dealing with customers, never say no, always try to find a solution. Because no to a customer ends the relationship. I need to be creative. I need to be able to find solutions. I don't give away what the customer wants necessarily, but I try to find a way to make everybody happy in situations. The final thing, and I'll leave you with this, and this is really important if you have employees now, because it's hard to find good employees out there in this market. So there's two solutions. Try to find the needle in the haystack out there, or hold on to the good ones I got. And here's the problem I see all the time. Nobody wants to hear the problems, so their assumption is, if I'm not hearing any problems, there are no problems. And I'm going to tell you, that's not true. If you're a leader, the people that you lead, and this includes family-owned businesses where there's the elder generation and then the younger generation, the person who is in the more subordinate role assumes you know everything that they're dealing with, and you endorse it. They believe you to be omnipotent or omniscient. Omniscient, right? Omnipotent too, probably. And you're not. In fact, the bigger the operation gets, the stupider leadership becomes. And I don't mean that as an indictment. It's big organizations. I don't know everything. How can I know everything? The last person I go to talk about how an organization works and what the culture is the CEO. They have no freaking idea. You go to the sites, you talk to the people, they'll tell you what the culture is. But their assumption is this is the culture that person wants. And it's not typically, but this person isn't going to go find trouble. What I'm going to tell you to do is go find the trouble. Do what I call people preventative maintenance, because leaders have authority but very little impact. And the rank and file has a lot of impact but very little authority. And you got to reconcile that in your culture. You got to make sure the people with authority understand the impact, and the people with the impact have a way to give that information to people with authority. And I call it people preventative maintenance. Just every month, sit down with each employee that you have, and if you have a big enough organization that you have departments, this could be the department head with their department employees. Spend about 15 minutes casually executed, get a cup of coffee, go get a beer, whatever is appropriate to you, but track it formally because you want to make sure you get to everybody every month. And you're going to find out some things about policies that don't work, equipment that don't work, safety problems, customer concerns, inefficiencies, simply by doing this. 15 minutes, not in your office. What things are frustrating about your job? What do you need to make it easier to do your job? How can I better communicate with you? And how can I make your work safer? The first 4 months you do this, they will not tell you a damn thing. They'll say everything is great because they don't trust it. Because why are we having this conversation? You've never shown an interest in me before. This seems like a trap. About 3 or 4 months in, they'll dip the toe in this. They'll give you a small thing. Well, you know, this particular piece of equipment doesn't work very well. It'd be great if we could replace it. And chances are you'll be like, I had no idea. Yeah, we'll get that fixed or replaced. I'll be on that right away. And that's the key. Whatever they give you, fix it. If it can't be fixed, explain why. Before you know it, they can't wait for these meetings. Before you know it, they don't wait for these meetings. They just come barging in and tell you. Because you're creating this open dialogue and they're realizing you don't know this stuff. I got to tell you this stuff. And then you'll fix it. When organizations adopt people preventative maintenance, they get rid of employee opinion surveys, which is another sacred cow I hate. Employee opinion surveys do more harm than good. Now, it's too late if you've already started, because if you take it away now, people are going to say, oh, I guess you don't care. But you've been showing you don't care since you started doing the employee opinion surveys. Because typically you get the results, but then you don't do anything with them, which then just makes them useless. So instead of employee opinion surveys, actually sit down face-to-face with your people once a month, have this very brief conversation, collect that data, act on that data, make sure you get to everybody. That is what creates a leadership ideology that is a peak performance culture. Does that make sense? So I tried to give you some pragmatic, actionable things to do, items that you can do right away. Did we accomplish that? Did you get some ideas today? Excellent. Whoops, going the wrong way. Remember, this is where we started, so we talked about all 5 of the metrics of organizational excellence. And that's the subtitle of the book. Oh, look, there's an image. Peak Performance Culture, the 5 metrics of organizational excellence. That is currently out now. The previous 2 books, The Power of Understanding People was an Amazon Editor's Choice for Best Business Book, and The Power of Understanding Yourself was Training Magazine's Editor's Pick for Best Personal Development Book. So I don't care if you buy a book. Honestly, I would love for you to buy a book, but what I really want more than anything is for you to feel that you benefited with some good information today, something that you can go back and use. If there is a desire to expand on that, obviously the books are good resources. Also, I love to hear from you. So if you're a LinkedIn person, that is my one and only social media outlet is LinkedIn. Please reach out, connect with me. I love doing that. My email address is dave@theleadershipdifference.com. I answer lots of questions about book content or speaking content via that way, so please don't hesitate to do so. It's been a joy. Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for your attention today. I'm going to throw it back to Heather because I think there is a break on its way, right? Or do you want me just to send them? Yes. Sure. Yeah, it's not what I want. It's what they want. Do you want to do Q&A? Questions? That went well. I felt like, yeah. That way, there's a question over here. Yes, sir. Do you have a story that you want to share? Oh. Oh, you mean the interviewee is going to come with their story? They're prepared for that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've all probably seen them. There's whole resources given to interviewees about how to navigate interviews, right? So a really prepared interviewee might come with their story. That's fine. I still want to hear how they handled it. Yeah. Is it an absolute truth that if they claim an internal locus of control in the job interview, they're going to display that at work? No. We've all hired the evil twin, right? We hired the person that was great in the interview, but the evil twin showed up to work, right? That still can happen. And by the way, I'm sorry, now I'm going on and on. Do you know that the job interview's likelihood of actually predicting a successful candidate is 50%. 50%, which is exactly the same efficacy as a coin toss. So, if I can leave you with this to save you a lot of time, next time you have an opening, just have them show up en masse and just say, okay, Tommy, heads or tails? Oh, sorry, Betty, heads or tail? I mean, it's quicker. Save you so much. I mean, it's offensive, right? The reason for that is we, as interviewers, don't prep. We don't work at this. They show up, we kind of off the top of our head ask questions. There's no strategy, there's no purpose to the questions. It's all relationship based. And if there's one thing human beings are good at, even the people that in any other context are crappy at rapport building, when there's something in it for me, I can build rapport. I don't care who you are, right? And that's what we fall victim to, is you fall in love with them. I like them. Based on what? I don't know, I got a thing. All right, there's 50 on that side now. So, all right, thank you for your question. I appreciate it. Heather, turn it back over to you. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Stay here for just a moment.
Sure.
So no, I was just going to come up and explain. So for our Q&A, we use Slido. So if you can put the slide back up, please. So what you'll do is you'll take your phone and you will basically try and take a picture of the QR code that'll take you to the Slido site, and that'll take you to our conference site. So through there, throughout today, all tomorrow, you can basically type in your questions to the speakers as they're speaking or after they're speaking. And then what we'll do for the speakers is kind of display the questions as they come up on the screen, and then you can just rapid fire answer them if you want. So I don't know, Matt, if we've had any questions come up. So we can go to, there we go. So the questions will come up as they come, and I'll come and yank you off when you're out of time. How's that?
Yep. The wordsmithing of that sentence probably should have been better. Are there trends you're noticing right now in the area of organizational culture? Well, that's a good question. I think I'm going to take a longer view on this. I think during times when it is easier to find employees, it's almost like when unemployment rates are higher and companies are more stable in their employee population, that's when I see them put more effort into culture building and working on cultures. And then unfortunately, unfortunately I mean relative to culture, when organizations are struggling to find employees and when that economic driver kind of flips over, they sacrifice that more. They're more desperate, I guess. And so what's really important, whether this exists universally or not, is when we're stable as an organization, that we create that vertical alignment and we put the infrastructure in place to inculcate people when we do have this more robust churn in our employee base. So you'll follow me here, but when we have openings, it usually means a leader is now doing a line level task, a senior leader is doing a mid-level task. Everything is being sucked down a level. and everybody's overworked. And so then we finally find someone we think is going to replace this opening, and we try to get them into that job as fast as possible so they can contribute, so everybody can go back up. But in doing so, we circumvent a lot of the infrastructure that's designed to inculcate them. So we don't put them through a good orientation process. We don't put them through the good training. We don't take the job description and go over it with them because we're so desperate to be relieved of this pace that we're experiencing. Does that make sense? So I don't know if that qualifies as a trend, but I see this over and over again. It's like we never learn. It's like when we aren't crazy, then we work on our culture. But when we are crazy, we don't, which then erodes the culture. Culture is something that has to be a priority. It can't be when it's convenient for us, we will work on our culture. Does that make sense? Did that answer the question of the anonymous person that asked it? Okay. Oh, another. Will the reverse be true that evangelists drop straight to heretics? Well, hopefully, yes, that is true. But the beautiful thing is they're evangelists because you have a track record. And there's this concept in psychology called filtering. And filtering means that once I like you, I then look for things that reinforce that opinion. So has anybody ever met someone for the first time at a party or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, I really like them. And then you continue to interact with them, and and then it could be years before you start to realize, you know what, no, I don't. It's a first marriage, for example, for a lot of people, right? It can take a long time for you to put credibility in counter-filtered data. It's motivated reasoning. It's a cognitive bias, right? I liked you, so I now look for reasons to confirm that opinion. So with an evangelist, you'd have to screw up repeatedly and in pretty dramatic ways for them to drop to a heretic. But if they do drop, it's probably to a heretic, because they're going to go around saying, oh man, I used to love that place, but I had some bad experiences, and so now they're a heretic. They're going around telling others, right? So yeah, because the common denominator is passion. Oh my gosh. All right, cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. I feel like we're missing some now.
So they're copying them to the top and erasing them as you answer them. So the next one
Oh, okay.
is the thought leaders. Yeah.
Who are some of the thought leaders you like to read and listen to? This is counterintuitive. I don't really care what people who call themselves thought leaders think, because that's often more marketing than actual, game. I like to talk to actual leaders out there, so my clients. And as I said before, I talk to the C-suite because that's usually where my business development efforts are. But I still find, and maybe this is the small rural pragmatist, my father speaking, I like to talk to managers, maybe directors, but the people that are still connected to the work that's done every day. Because to me, they know the most. It's kind of a weird phenomenon where the Peter Principle, have you heard of this? As you go up an organization, the types of skills that are valuable to you aren't really related to the work anymore. It's more the politics, the fundraising, the shareholder meetings. So I don't really feel like they help me much. My thought leaders are first level and senior manager level people that do the work, are responsible for delivering, who get chewed out if they don't deliver it, who have more people responsible directly to them. That's who I like to talk to. So I don't know. Unfortunately, they don't get to write books or get podcasts. But I really recommend that's who you talk to, because that's the unvarnished truth, not the slick marketing Simon Sinek kind of thing. Did I just bash Simon Sinek? I think I did. Don't tell him. Is it better to spend time converting heretics versus unsatisfied customers to evangelists? Well, it's easier because heretics let you know they're heretics. Unsatisfied, you got to go find. Now, if you have a good way of knowing someone has used you as a customer and never come back, then yeah, go chase them. But they don't usually make themselves known. They're very passive aggressive very often. They won't tell you they're unhappy, but they'll tell everybody else. So yeah, if you know that they're unsatisfied, sure, knock yourself out. But heretics make it easy for you because they tell you. How can employees help build culture with an organization? So, employees, I believe, for all my pragmatism, I believe in people. I'm a humanist. I do believe in people. They piss me off, but I believe in them. I believe they want to do good work. I believe they want to make people proud. I believe that, like all of us, everybody wants to pursue happiness and success. So I believe their heart's in the right place. I just got to make it easy for them. So put the infrastructure in place, that job description, orientation, explain the culture that you're trying to create, and model that through your own leadership. And I believe the employees will and do build the culture. There's more employees than there are you. No matter how big a force in nature you are, the employees have more impact on the culture than you do. So yes, I do believe in them. But you've got to make it easy for them. How do you coach farm founders who are not aware how their avoidance of conflict is crushing the ability? This sounds really specific, like just happened like an hour ago, to create solutions or issues in the farm. Let me try that again. How do you coach farm founders who are not aware how their avoidance of conflict is crushing the ability to create solutions for issues in the farm business? Well, that sounds like it may be a more complex situation than I'm going to be able to answer, but I'm going to focus on the conflict part because this is a personal crusade of mine. I do adjunct professor work at the University of Illinois, Walla Walla University, Whitman College, and Walla Walla Community College, and I am the chair of the Business Advisory Council, and I have been saying for the last 6 years that I have been in the role for the Business Advisory Committee that we have to teach conflict resolution skills. We do not resolve conflict effectively. So it wouldn't surprise me that an inability or an unwillingness to engage in conflict resolution would be an inhibitor to some decision making because nobody gets taught that. And I've lobbied for that to be in the curriculum in our schools for years. Having said that, you will find no greater evangelist for teachers than me. And I understand they got a lot on their plate, and their pushback is always, this is a parenting issue, this is not a teaching issue. To which I say, have you met the parents? Have you gone online and read their social media? This is a generational issue. This is not Gen Z. This is baby boomers. The people that are dying now never had conflict resolution skills. Nobody teaches it. So it's going to come to businesses now because the school system, at least in the United States, isn't going to teach it. I'm pretty convinced. So it's going to be up to business to teach conflict resolution skills. So we have to teach them. And there is a myriad of resources for that. Books out there, critical conversations that you can use to guide that. I even do seminars on conflict resolution. But we have to teach each other to do that. It's very likely that the person who is not engaging in conflict resolution is doing so not because of an unwillingness to deal with the problem, but an inability to resolve conflict effectively. They've tried to do it before, it created hard feelings, and now I just avoid it because that caused more damage. So we do, as a society, have to become better at resolving conflict because the nastiness that's flung around social media, it's not conducive to the type of world that we want to create. So if it's not conducive to the kind of world we want to create, then we need to figure out what we need to do. And part of that solution is teaching conflict resolution, if not in schools, then in the workplace. All right, that seems to be the prompt, like, get the hell off the stage. All right, thank you so much. That was cool. That was a cool element. I feel like we can do it.
Right.
All right.
We've gotten very close now. We're best friends. So I know we're behind schedule, but I think it was my fault, so there you go. But I think it was important to see that through and to have the Q&A, and we did build in buffers as part of our risk management in terms of time frames. So yeah, now we're gonna head to break. I guess that's my cue to flick the slide here. So yeah, we have a 15-minute health break and networking opportunities, so all of your snacks and goodies are in the hallway there. And then after that, we'll come back and have our National Farm Business Management Resource Showcase. I wish we had a cool acronym for it. But when you come back, I'll come back up here and explain, but basically we have lots of organizations and colleagues who have resources and programs and tools and things like that for producers, and so you'll choose the table of your liking and have 15 minutes to learn all about what's going on, and then we'll get up and we'll switch tables and go to the tables that you like. So you'll probably have a chance to do about 4 of, I think it's the 15 tables available. So choose wisely, but I'll explain all that again when we come back. And Dave, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. I took so many notes and I kept telling the team, oh my gosh, here's some quotes and tidbits. So it's really nice to have that practical advice, like the comment over here, you know, what are the words I can use? What are the questions I can ask? And what am I looking for in those responses? So we always love those practical take-homes and takeaways we can exercise right away. So thanks again so much, and we'll see everyone in 15 minutes after the break.